All right, let's go, and then I'm sure they'll bring me the note. As we were saying, just as a reminder, there will be a 3 p.m. Security Council meeting on Ukraine. From our end, the Secretary General will brief, and this obviously comes at the conclusion of his trip. He just landed back in New York a few hours ago after having been to Turkey, the Russian Federation, Poland, Ukraine, Niger, Nigeria, and Senegal. Also briefing will be the Emergency Relief Coordinator, Martin Griffiths, who I think will brief virtually, as well as the High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet. And we will share all of those remarks with you in advance as much as we can. As you saw yesterday, the humanitarian coordinator for Ukraine, Osnat Lubrani, said that a new safe passage operation to evacuate civilians stranded in Mariupol and other communities had been completed. Once again, she said the UN team and colleagues from the International Committee for the Red Cross worked together to bring people who wanted to leave areas experiencing hostilities and to bring them to safety with the agreement of the parties to the conflict. Ms. Lubrani said that more than 300 civilians from Mariupol, Manhush, Berdyansk, Tokmak, and Vasilivka are now receiving humanitarian assistance in Zaporizhia. She added that while this second evacuation of civilians from the areas in Mariupol and beyond is significant, much more needs to be done to make sure that all civilians caught up in fighting can leave in the directions that they wish. Our work with the parties to guarantee safe passage for civilians will continue. Humanitarian update from Ethiopia, where our colleagues tell us that a convoy of 27 trucks carrying nearly 1,000 metric tons of food and other essential items reached Mekele in the Tigray region last weekend. That's on the 29th and 30th of April. This was the fourth humanitarian convoy that reached Tigray since the transport of aid resumed at the beginning of April, following more than 3 months of interruption. In total, 169 trucks have reached Tigray since convoys resumed, transporting some 4,300 metric tons of desperately needed aid supplies. Food and other aid from these convoys have been dispatched from Mekele to priorities areas around Tigray where they're being distributed. Fuel that has recently arrived is also allowing critical operations to be expanded. The rate at which aid is arriving into Tigray, however, remains a small fraction of what is needed. Essential services, including electricity, communications networks, banking services, remain largely cut off. The UN, along with our partners, is continuing to work with authorities to urgently scale up the deliveries of relief supplies into Tigray, including seed and fertilizers, ahead of the critical summer planting season. We're also working with authorities to expand much-needed assistance in areas of Afar and Amhara regions that have been affected by the conflict. In Amhara, food partners reached some 56,000 people with food in the past week. Since late December, more than 10 million people have received food assistance from the government, the UN, and NGO partners. And I have a couple of peacekeeping updates for you. The first one being from South Sudan, where the UN mission there says its engineers from six troop-contributing countries are currently building and improving roads across South Sudan. So far, the engineers from Bangladesh, China, the Republic of Korea, Thailand, India, and Pakistan, as well as partners, have repaired some 3,200 kilometers worth of roads. This week, peacekeepers restored areas of the route from Adwang to Malakal, the capital of Upper Nile State. This would facilitate humanitarian access as well as trade, and also increase the overall freedom of movements of South Sudanese people. The UN mission's engineers have also finished repairing some of the main roads in Malakal, including the road linking the city to the airport. And from the Central African Republic, the UN peacekeepers there tell us that they've set up position said they have set up a position, and the mission has stepped up its patrol in Nzako, which is near Bangasu in Mbumu Prefecture, and also to increase security in the area. This follows an attack on a base of the Central African Armed Forces by combatants allegedly from the Mouvement Patriotique pour la Centrafrique and the Front Populaire for la Renaissance de la Centrafrique. That attack on the Faka base took place on April 28th. Also on the humanitarian front, in the Central African Republic, more than 60% of people there already need humanitarian assistance, and our colleagues tell us that the crisis is likely to worsen in the coming months because of the crisis in Ukraine is disrupting supply chains, and prices of fuel, medicine, and food are rising, something the Secretary General has been underscoring during his West African trip. For example, the price of wheat flour has increased by 36% in the last 2 weeks and is expected to increase another 30% by August. It's projected that 2.2 million people, and that's about 45% of the population in the Central African Republic, will suffer from high levels of acute food insecurity during the lean season between April and August. Health organizations have only 30% of the medication and other essential supplies they need to respond. There's also an urgent need for a scaled-up humanitarian response. Funding needs will increase drastically, including for health, food, and logistics. The humanitarian response plan for Central African Republic, which calls for $461 million to help 2 million people this year, is only 20% funded. And a quick update for you from Iraq, where our UN team there continues to support the authorities to respond to and recover from the pandemic. Nearly 8.6 million vaccines have landed in Iraq through COVAX alone, with WHO and UNICEF supporting authorities' vaccine distribution efforts. Over 7 million people in Iraq are now fully vaccinated. To boost recovery, we've also supported more than 620 infrastructure projects, which are benefiting more than 4.2 million people, increasing access to basic services while also rehabilitating thousands of houses, 84 healthcare centers, and nearly 200 schools. More than half of returnees are now living in locations with better services and infrastructure. Also, 150,000 refugees, displaced returnees, and other vulnerable groups are receiving cash assistance. Quick note from our friends at the Food and Agricultural Organization, who have presented the Collaborative Partnership on Forests award to activist Cecile Njebet of Cameroon. She received this year's Wangari Maathai Forest Champions Award in recognition of her outstanding contribution to preventing forests and improving the lives of people who depend on them. Roughly 70% of women in Cameroon live in rural areas and are dependent, or at least in part, on harvesting wild forest products for their livelihoods, yet many are denied the right to own forest lands. More information online. You will see yesterday afternoon we issued a statement in which the Secretary General strongly condemned the deadly al-Shabaab attack early on the week on an African Union transition mission in Somalia base, staffed by Burundian peacekeepers. The Secretary General paid tribute to all the African Union troops and expressed his heartfelt condolences to those killed. And today is World Portuguese Language Day. The Portuguese language is not only one of the most widespread languages in the world, with more than 265 million speakers spread through all continents, it is also the most widely spoken language in the Southern Hemisphere. It happens to be the mother tongue of my boss, which is always important. And today we say thank you to Tunisia for full payments of the regular budget. It takes us to 97. We're close to the century. James?
Yeah, follow-ups to Mariupol. So you got more people out, but you haven't got more people out of the steelworks. What work is the UN doing at trying to establish exactly how many civilians there are in Azovstal? I mean, could you, next time you try and persuade the Russians to have a ceasefire, send in an assessment team? I understand some people might be trapped underground.
The plant, from what my colleagues tell me, is an extremely challenging place in every aspect. It's in the middle of an active war zone. Parts of it have been destroyed. There are people living in tunnels. It is very difficult for us to have an exact number. We are continuing working in partnership, of course, hand in glove with the ICRC and dealing with the highest levels of both Ukraine and Russia to get more people out of the Mariupol region as well as the plant.
And another specific question on that. You're doing this with the ICRC, which are the guardians of the Geneva Conventions, and specific area there is wounded soldiers. There are apparently in the plant wounded soldiers. Are you looking at getting them medical attention or getting them out?
What I can tell you is that the focus of our work at this point is on evacuating civilians.
I have another question on a different part of the world, if I can. In the West Bank, the Israeli High Court has ruled that people living in a place called Masafa Yatta should be forcibly transferred. They say it should become a closed Israeli military zone. We're talking about 1,200 Palestinians being forcibly transferred.
Let me look into that. I hadn't seen that report. Edie, and then Maggie.
Thanks, Steph. I have a couple of follow-ups also. First, does the Secretary General have any comment on the $6.5 billion pledged today for humanitarian aid to Ukraine? In Poland,
In Poland, yes, exactly. Well, we always, we welcome any increase to our to the funding of our humanitarian operations.
Okay. In Israel at the holy sites, there were more scuffles today. Does the Secretary General have any comment on that?
Yeah, we are obviously following the situation. We remain deeply concerned about the ongoing tensions in Jerusalem, particularly around the holy sites. We once again reiterate our position that the status quo at the holy sites must be upheld and respected. No excuse for any violence, no excuse for any provocations on the Holy Esplanade, and they must stop now to prevent any further escalations. Our representative on the ground, Tor Venislan, remains in touch with all the relevant parties to urge calm and urge restraint.
And thirdly, the Secretary General was in Nigeria yesterday, and there was an attack by an Islamic extremist rebel group in northeast Borno State where 7 people were killed. Did he discuss this attack or other attacks with President Buhari?
I don't know if he discussed that particular attack, but they definitely discussed the situation in Borno State, in the Northwest. I think the Secretary General, in his remarks to the press, underscored the need to fight, obviously to condemn these acts of unacceptable violence, but also to fight terrorism not just through security measures, but through socioeconomic and measures, and to the importance of reintegration. Margaret.
Steph, you didn't read it out, but WHO put out a statement on 15 million additional deaths from COVID-related deaths. Does the Secretary General have any reaction to that? And could you just clarify for me, when you read out the COVAX stuff and you say fully vaccinated, by UN standards, that's 2 shots or a booster, or it's 2 shots, right?
Maggie, the fact you're actually paying attention to what I say is great,
Thank you.
but I wish I could answer. It's a very, very valid question, whether it's 2 or 3. Exactly. Yeah, it's a very good question. We'll find out. On the 15 million, yet another grim milestone and a reminder that we still have to live with this pandemic, that we still need to redouble our efforts for equity when it comes to the distribution of vaccines and all other therapies to help fight this virus. Monsieur, please, go ahead. Go ahead, sorry.
Thank you, Steph. Abdullah Masi from Television Arabi. Steph, I do have a question regarding Yemen. Some reports stated that Houthis carried out yesterday some attacks in the Taiz province. First, can you confirm is this report? Also, does the Secretary General have any comment, any action in order to save the 2-month national way truce? Thank you.
No comments on these reports. I mean, I think in any of these situations, you will see. It's not unexpected to see incidents one place or another. We strongly believe that this truce is continuing. And that the parties should use this moment to redouble their efforts to work together on a political solution with the support of the United Nations. Edward.
Yeah, I just want to confirm this because according to Martin Griffiths on the fundraising event, there's a new UN convoy is heading to the Azovstal Steelworks. Is that what you mentioned just now?
Yeah, I mean, we're, with all due respect to Mr. Griffiths, I'm not from here, as you know, going to confirm or speak about whatever ongoing operations there may be. There are some, as you know, every one of these operations is extremely delicate. It involves crossing lines. It involves our staff spending night or maybe even 2 in different places along the road. Our aim is to get in there, get civilians out safely, and get our staff out safely.
So you have the summary of this operation if it.
Sorry?
I mean, you will have a summary.
I mean, as
after-
you know, every time we successfully complete an operation, we confirm it. We put out a statement.
But now you're preferring not to talk about this.
I do not want to talk about any operations that may be ongoing.
Okay.
Mario and then Linda, sorry.
Just to follow up on Azovstal, do you have any information on what the situation is there on the ground today after Russia announced this 3-day ceasefire?
I mean, the situation. Sorry, the situation continues to be extremely dire for civilians. I think what we're seeing from the people that have come out is not only some of them are in need, obviously, of medical help, they're dehydrated, they lack food, but the psychological impact that these people have to deal with, the trauma they have lived, that is something that they need immediate support for, and they will likely need support for in the weeks ahead. Linda and then Patrick.
Thank you, Steph. You've discussed, obviously, the humanitarian status of the humanitarian situation, military. I was just wondering if there are any new developments in terms of the political track and
Well, I mean,
what's
you know,
going
on the political track directly between Ukraine and Russia, that is really being supported by Turkey, but I have not seen any further updates. Patrick.
Good afternoon, Stepan. Just a quick follow-up on I think Edith's earlier question regarding the Secretary General's visit to Nigeria. Just want to get this straight. This is his first visit to Nigeria since his appointment?
That's correct.
And why now, May 2022, given that Boko Haram has been wreaking havoc in Nigeria for more than 12 years? And Nigeria is the most populous country in Africa. I mean, why the neglect of this very important country?
I don't think. Listen, I don't think he's been neglecting it. There have been a number of trips to Africa that were supposed to be had in the last 2 years. Some of them have been canceled at the last minute. Nigeria is, as the Secretary General himself said, a critical partner for the UN in many facets of our multilateral work. As you also may know, our Deputy Secretary General has also gone to Nigeria a number of times. So I don't think this should be interpreted as neglect in any way, shape, or form. There are there are a number of critical countries, and of course, every 193 of our member states are critical, that he hasn't been able to go to. And it's, I mean, travel's been curtailed, to say the least, since the start of the pandemic. Okay. Ray.
Thank you, Stefan. There are some reports that say that WHO is considering a resolution next week against Russia and also considering shutting down the Europe hub in Moscow. Can you confirm that?
No, you'd have to ask WHO. They have their own governing body. Okay. Margaret.
Just on Ethiopia, what's the Secretariat's assessment of the status of this ceasefire? You're getting more aid in, but we're hearing about still fighting like in Amhara and such. So how do you rate it
Our
now?
understanding is that there is still some conflict points, but we are getting some aid in. I mean, the fact we've gotten a few convoys in over the last few weeks is good news for those people that it's able to help, but it's clearly not enough. I mean, the fact that every convoy has to be negotiated, has to be planned, has to be plotted, adds time, adds money, but in the end just delays the delivery of humanitarian aid. Ideally, we would like to use that road into Mekele as an open highway to just move trucks in there constantly, and not just with foodstuff, but also with gas. Okay. Ms. Kubiak, up to you.